What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 240 on this Monday, January 12th, 2026. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy with you on a Monday. Collin is back from San Antonio. We have a lot to talk about, a lot of transfer portal to get into. Oklahoma's added a bunch of guys. They've lost some others. There's still some more to be done. We'll get into everything with the transfer portal on the show today. Right guy talk about, obviously, with the great Collin Kennedy. Also have some recruiting stuff to get into. 2 commits for Oklahoma over the weekend in San Antonio. We mentioned Collin was there. We'll talk about each one of those guys individually as well on the back end. So a lot to talk about, both portal and traditional recruiting on a Monday. Very rare to have Collin here on a Monday show. We shifted things around. He was in San Antonio. We couldn't get a late week show, so we said, let's go Collin Monday. We'll get Tom in later in the week, and we'll kind of get back on normal schedule from there. The portal, it's crazy week last week. A lot going on, and we'll try to recap as best we can on the show today. A reminder, before we get started, as always, you can subscribe to Sooners Illustrated at oklahoma.247sports.com, SoonersIllustrated.com. Promo code SoonersPod60, all one word, gets you 60% off a VIP membership for a year to Sooners Illustrated and the entire 24/7 Sports Network. So make sure to use that promo code. Take advantage. Lots of portal content, more to come. Basketball season, spring ball here before you know it. Jump in, be with us every step of the way as Sooners Illustrated. All right, Collin, let's do it. A lot to talk about. You were in San Antonio. Yep. First off, welcome back. Hopefully it was a good week down there. I know it's very busy. We planned, obviously, Collin and I do the show. Originally thought maybe Thursday, like normal, just too busy. Had the Jason Witten news, which Tom and I did the instant reaction show on Thursday. Then we thought, let's try to squeeze a show maybe Friday morning. Just wasn't in the cards. We're like, all right, do what you got to do. We'll come back Monday. We'll hit it all. So glad you're back. Hopefully it was a good week out there. I'll say a very productive week for Oklahoma with 2 commits that we'll talk about later. But hopefully a good time for you down there. Hopefully.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to say thank you and apologize, honestly, to both you and Tom for covering for me while I was pretty preoccupied. And then a big thanks to all of our subscribers at Sooners Illustrated for the patience and the understanding. I know a lot of our folks on the board know what the Navy All-American Bowl week means for me specifically. And through that, it is probably one of my busiest weeks of the year. I had a lot going on. I don't really have time to explain what my day-to-day out there looks like, but it literally at some points is, for me, difficult to just sit down, pick up the phone, make calls, and write. I'm moving around that much and wearing a lot of different hats, and Josh and Tom and the good folks out there made it a lot easier on me while I was trying to help our team at 24/7 Sports and help the great folks at the Navy All-American Bowl and National Combine. So a lot went on, man. I mean, and quite literally while I was trying to handle everything else, I'm excited to actually like sit down, process all of this finally, and talk a little ball through it all. Because, I mean, again, it's like I've been reporting on this. We've been talking about it. But now I finally get to like sit down and kind of contextualize it all. I'm looking forward to today's show.
A lot to talk. A lot's happened. It's been a crazy. I mean, just since last time that you and I did a show, but even since last Monday, last time we had a full show. Again, Tom and I did the instant reaction on Thursday, where we did some Jason Witten stuff because that was also the big news of that day. But just since last Monday, I mean, a lot. And so we're gonna recap it all as best we can. Let's obviously start with the good. Everything they've added. It's been a great transfer portal for Oklahoma. All this credit being given to Jim Nagy and this front office, and for good reason, because it's been great, right? I mean, they've addressed a lot of their needs. They've made some big additions, some splash additions. Let's kind of recap it. I'm just going to rattle off the names, and then we can kind of go whichever direction you want to go to start with it. So obviously last Monday, whenever Tom and I did the show Monday afternoon, we were able to talk about Hayden Hansen, Caleb Nitta, Trell Harris, and Amarian Harris. So those 4 we've talked about. We did that last week. Since then, even on Monday, they added a few more after we recorded the show. Since then, and last week, they've added a bunch more. I'm going to rattle them off, and then we can just kind of go whatever direction you want to go with it. Colorado State running back Lloyd Avant, Colorado State tight end Rocky Beers, brother of Reagan Beers, of course, women's hoops star. Oregon cornerback Dakota Fields, Texas wide receiver Parker Livingstone, a Red River transfer there, always fun. UTSA defensive lineman Kenny Ozawalu, Michigan linebacker Cole Sullivan, Georgia Tech offensive lineman Peyton Joseph, And then just yesterday, Washington State wide receiver Mackenzie Allen comes aboard. I think that's everyone. Hopefully I didn't miss one. Collin, where do your eyes go first as far as what stands out to you from what they've added? Obviously, it's been a very fruitful portal for Oklahoma. They've hit some big names here. What stands out, at least first, when you look at this list as kind of maybe the splashiest get of them all in your mind?
I'll say this too. If you are curious for some of my thoughts on some of the other guys I'm not getting ready to talk about, I think I did a podcast with News 9, News 6 in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, talked about a few of these guys, but I think you have to kind of start with Parker Livingstone, right?
I mean, the Red River transfer is
that's the big one. You see a Red River transfer, and that's not always all that common. This one is fascinating to me because I followed Parker since he was a recruit, and I know that I'm going to preface this conversation with this. There are a lot of people who I liked Parker Livingstone coming out of high school. There are a lot of people who are much higher on his capabilities than me. I think that this is a very talented player. I'm not getting ready to sit here and tell you this is wide receiver 1 at Oklahoma. I'm not going to do that. But what I think that Parker Livingstone provides is just something that they did not have last season, in a bigger body who, when he is dialed in, he is extremely sure-handed.
Sure.
He can be a vertical threat, someone who can take the top off the defense, maybe be a valuable option in terms of some of the over the middle work. I just see this guy as kind of a safety blanket for Oklahoma's offense and a reliable presence that you can lean on when maybe the defense is trying to dial in specifically on a receiver or two within this offense, whether that be maybe like a Trell Harris and Isaiah Satania. So Parker Livingstone, for me, the situation itself also has its own saga or story. I've talked to people about that as well. Not here to dive into all that, but I think that the end result certainly is one that favors Oklahoma, obviously, but I also think it's one that OU's ecstatic about, considering the Sooners were in on him in the recruiting process as well.
Sure.
So really quality get, and I am curious to see what Parker Livingstone does in Norman, because if he does what I think he's capable of, this OU receiver room, the competitive floor, just got even better.
No, I'm with you completely. I love the Livingstone addition. He feels like a perfect fit to go with what they have elsewhere in that room, right? And you pair it what they got with bringing in obviously Trell Harris from Virginia, who we talked about last week. Obviously, we still have not yet heard for sure about Isaiah Satania. The deadline to enter the NFL draft is this week, so there's still something to be decided there with Satania. But if it goes the way it looks like it's going to go, hopefully you get Isaiah Satania back into the fold, and that's a legitimate trio with Harris, Satania, and now Livingstone. Like, that's not just like a good, like that's a great group and a great starting line if that's the way it goes, to have Satania, Harris, and Livingstone. If that can be your trio, I mean, that's quite a starting line for John Mateer to work with. So I'm with you totally. I love the Livingstone addition. I think that's a great fit. Just kind of a sure-handed, bigger body guy, like you said. I like that addition a lot. What about Cole Sullivan? Because I think that's the other one. I just mentioned Isaiah Satania. We don't yet know officially. Frankly, I would have thought this would have been handled a long time ago. Satania, Kip Lewis, even John Mateer to an extent. The deadline to put your name in the NFL draft is this week. So we're going to know soon, right? One way or another, we're going to know. The other big one is Kip Lewis, right? I mean, he's the other big fish in that, like, could go to the NFL. We don't know yet for sure. They need linebackers. Talk about that at length, and we're going to talk about Samuel Masillo getting in the portal in just a little bit. But Cole Sullivan comes in from Michigan. That feels like another one, kind of like Livingstone or Harris even, just like an immediate plug-and-play starter, right? I mean, this is a big addition at a spot you need it at linebacker. I think getting him is probably one of the other if you made me make an argument for biggest get, I think there's one to be said for Cole Sullivan, right? I mean, that's quite an addition that they really need at a spot they needed.
I would argue that this is one of Oklahoma's favorite additions via the portal to this point.
Yeah.
I think it was very apparent that this is an individual that OU felt was a non-negotiable for lack of a better term. I mean, they went all in on this guy, and they saw firsthand what he's capable of. Cole Sullivan had one of his better games at Michigan against Oklahoma this past season, had a sack, a fumble recovery, did some pretty solid things on the field. And I think we talk about it a lot, this linebacker-centric staff watched Cole Sullivan and maybe said, hey, like that's a pretty darn good football player. When he becomes available in the portal, knowing your system and what you run and how an individual like this could fit it, I mean, the Sooners kind of sunk their teeth into this portal recruitment. Now, he visited early, like very early in the window. I believe maybe was on campus like the first or second day of the window being officially open.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, we reported that as he was getting ready to leave campus, that Michigan was already preparing its counter offer. And you know what I'm going to say, the counterpunch concept in recruiting never gets talked about enough. Everyone wants to go off the vibe, the individual feel of a visit. And what followed was heated, for lack of a better term. Michigan made a sizable offer. The new staff there in Ann Arbor under Kyle Whittingham, who's going to take that job from Utah, like they sold hard on the vision in Ann Arbor. And I think that, Cole Sullivan played there for a reason, right? He's someone who would like to be a Michigan Wolverine. But the changes and then the opportunity to play at a place like Oklahoma, where the linebacker track record is proven now under Brent Venables. And I think when Brent Venables went in home, it was like, all right, well, they're not going to lose on this guy. It is not going to be because Oklahoma didn't try every single route possible to lock him down. And it worked, right? Brent sat down with Cole and his family. Oklahoma ponied up from an offer standpoint, and they get it done. And I think Cole Sullivan, I said this the other day on one of the podcasts. One of our Michigan writers in 24/7 Sports said that Cole Sullivan's the type of talent under the tutelage of a Brent Venables who could end up being like a top 10 linebacker in college football next year. Now, I'm not going to venture that far because I need more time to study and watch the tape and all of that.
Sure.
But we know Cole Sullivan is a solid football player. And I personally, some of the tape that I've watched to this point, I think Cole Sullivan could play both inside linebacker spots. I think he could potentially play cheetah as well, which I think is partially a reason why they coveted him so heavily. And in general, man, I feel like this is someone who, at minimum, if Owen Heineke does not get that extra year, is that Owen Heineke replacement maybe. But on top of that, no matter how the linebacker room shakes out, like Cole Sullivan, we say it on this pod all the time, is just a Brent Venables guy. And I think that OU knew that. Brent wanted this one badly. And because of that, because of their perception in-house, they get him done. And they're bringing a guy that they love into the program.
So let me ask you this. Outside of the two we just talked about, which is Livingstone and Sullivan, and then obviously the guys we talked about last week with Hansen and certainly both of the Harrises, Trell and Amarian. When you look at the rest of the guys they've added, who would you say has got the best chance to be a big part of the team next year? And then that means, and obviously all these guys probably are going to have a role in some capacity or have a very good chance to. But if you had to pencil one in, and I'm talking about the group of Vaught, Beers, Fields, Ozawalu, Joseph, and Aline. If you had to pick one guy out of that group of like this guy, because I think it's pretty clear, like Sullivan, Livingstone, Harris, Hansen, these are guys who are probably going to be starters for you, right? It's pretty obvious from the rest of the group, not just depth additions, but legitimate, like that guy's going to be a big part of the team next year. If you had to pick one, what would it be? Or who would it be?
Yeah, and I can't remember if you've mentioned like a Dakota Fields in there as well.
Yeah, Dakota Fields, yeah.
Yeah, Dakota Fields, Caleb Nida, the center. There are a lot of options. Obviously, it's a lengthy list. For me, like, there are two guys that I would really like to talk about. And to your question, the guy who I think has a real opportunity to contribute at a high level is Rocky Beers. I don't think that that's a shocker.
Yeah.
And I would be curious to kind of hear your thoughts on it. But for me, I think that there's two layers to this. Number one, Oklahoma has been desperate to completely reset the tight end room. Hayden Hansen is coming in as like a guaranteed starter. But I think Oklahoma wants to run 12 personnel, and they want to run 12 personnel with tight ends being at the point of attack in the blocking schemes. I think that's Hayden Hansen's game. But we also know the other layer to this is that Oklahoma wants to include tight ends in the passing game. Oklahoma used Jaren Kanak to the degree in which at one point he was the SEC's leader in receptions at tight end, if I remember correctly. And they want to throw the ball to the tight ends. They had a linebacker playing there. And Rocky Beers is someone who averaged, if I remember correctly, more than 12 yards a catch as a tight end at Colorado State. I can only assume he's going to have more opportunity at a place like Oklahoma. I think that he is the skill set that would allow him to be a little bit more easy to feature in the passing game compared to a Jaren Kanak. I mean, Rocky Beers at 6'5", 250 pounds, nimble, like moves well, can be flexed out. I've watched some of his tape, and he can be kind of a 2-point as well, which Hayden Hansen's in a 3-point. Like, you can do a lot of different stuff with Rocky Beers, and he's a proven pass-catching threat.
Sure.
He addresses that need for them. And this is the other thing that I wanted to mention too. Like, this is a guy that wants to be here, right? Like, I think that's something you really have to consider with these transfer portal guys. Like, the phrase mercenary gets thrown out there a lot, and understandably so. But this is a guy that on his visit went and watched his sister play basketball.
Sure.
Like, he wants to be an Oklahoma Sooner. He is going to provide a level of effort that you feel is guaranteed. And at a spot like tight end, like, I think he's ready to give his all for the Oklahoma football program, and I think Oklahoma will reward him for that. So my eyes kind of go to Rocky Beers because we spent all offseason talking about the tight ends. Well, they got one. They got a really good one. And by the way, they got a guy who just wants to be part of the Oklahoma program. And I think there's value in all of that.
No, it's a great call because, like you said, using multiple tight ends, 2 tight end sets, and can he be a little more of the pass catcher guy where Hayden Hansen's more of your block, like that classic yin and yang. I think that's a good call. And like you said, I mean, by all accounts, the Beers family with Reagan, obviously, they like OU. Like they've really enjoyed her experience here, and I imagine that was a big part of. I mean, I think you see that with Rocky coming aboard. I mean, it's different programs, but I don't think he comes to OU if he's not getting a pretty good recommendation from Reagan of like, I love it here, sort of a thing. And so that is a great call. I'm curious your thoughts on Ozawalu. He really intrigues me a lot, UTSA, and the fact that he can kind of go inside or outside. First off, start there. Like, do you think he's gonna be a flexible type? Does Oklahoma have a vision for him in one or the other? Or what's kind of your understanding of how OU views Ozawalu? Because he's just, of all the guys they've added, he's the most intriguing, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like, there seems to be a lot of upside and potential there. I mean, obviously he comes to UTSA, so he's come from the G5 or G6, whatever it's called now. But I mean, you look at the other teams that were on this dude out of the portal. Obviously, Texas was very interested. Like, this is a guy that I think a lot of people think can play at this level. Where are you at with him? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this addition as well because it's hard to find defensive linemen not only with his build and his skill set, and I'll talk about more of that in a second, but with proven pass rush production available in this way. I mean, he already is a multi-sack guy at 6'4", 270 pounds. He's someone that can play a traditional defensive end alignment, but could kick out to that wide 9, that signature pass rush alignment. And then, my affinity for guys that can play defensive end, but kick inside to type maybe a 3-tech role and get after the quarterback along the interior on passing downs. And I think that's exactly what he's being brought in to do. I think he's going to basically be a bigger, more traditional defensive end that we're probably used to seeing when we were younger in your old school defensive end frame, but also Kenny has the type of capability to maybe get out into a 2-point and rush the passer, but get into the 3-tech role and attack the passer from the inside. And that type of capability, especially in this defense, I mean, it's invaluable. It's hard to truly put into context how important that is. And so I thought that was one of the better additions to this point, just considering what you're looking for in a defense. And so he's the one that I'm really interested in. I'll kind of share my follow-up too. I'm curious for your thoughts because I think we talked a lot about running back this offseason as well.
Sure.
So, little fun story. When I'm doing all this stuff at San Antonio, and I'm like trying to make sure 100 recruits are getting all their measurements done, but also not get lost in a hotel. I'm all over the place. Guys are committed to Oklahoma left and right in the portal. So I'm swimming upstream without a paddle. While all that's going on, Lloyd Avant pops, and I'm in a room in our check-in room at 24/7 Sports with like all of our coworkers, and about 3 guys who their job is to watch tape. About 3 guys out of the blue were like, "Hey man, Lloyd Avant's a good football player." Like they specifically singled out Lloyd Avant as someone that they're a fan of, and I wanted to mention that because I think there is a portion of the Oklahoma fan base out there that is not that high on Lloyd Avant. And I, quite frankly, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Now, let me mention this. I'm not sitting here and telling you he's RB1. I'm not doing that.
Sure.
That being said, when I was doing the podcast for News 9, News 6, Jeremy Poplin, who is part of the Tulsa football radio broadcast, mentioned Trey Lamb, when Lloyd was at Tulsa, said that Lloyd got an offer from LSU back before he went to Colorado State in the portal. So This is someone who at running back has been on SEC radars now for a long time. And Lloyd Avant, at the least, is going to provide you a third down back type of capability. And at his ceiling is someone who can give you a new dynamic element within this offense out of the backfield. And that's exactly what Oklahoma's been looking for. Right. And I think I also believe, too, that OU would like to tell you that they would like more of a receiving presence at running back or out of the backfield in general. And I think Lloyd can provide that. And so Lloyd is another one for me who I just – the best way to probably put it is I can't wait to see how exactly he contributes at Oklahoma because so many people I talk to behind the scenes are high on this guy. And I kind of am too. He's another one for me that when we talked about maybe a position of need, Lloyd Avant, I want to see him in Norman very soon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like Avant a lot for what he is, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Like he's not, like you said, he's not coming in to be running back one. It's clearly kind of what they've done here is a show of faith in Xavier Robinson and Torrey Blaylock. Those are still going to be Oklahoma's guys, right? You're also bringing in Jonathan Hatton, who we talked about a lot, or at the high school level, who you saw, obviously down in San Antonio, and the Zephyr Walker as well. And so you bring in Avant, like you mentioned a second ago, can catch passes, can probably do some kick return for you if you wanted. Like he's a veteran guy, played a lot of football. He just seems to be, when you look at it on paper, you went, obviously, Blaylock and Robert back. You basically are swapping out Barnes, Tatum, Ott for Avant, Hatton, Walker, right? That's what you're doing. You're going 3 for 3 bodies in that room, right? And when you kind of look at it that way, it's like another year older Torrey Blaylock will be in year 2, Rob in year 3. Obviously, I think you feel better about what Avant can give you as opposed to like maybe a Javante Barnes if that's a 1-for-1 swap. And then you go with, obviously, the young guys with Hatton and Walker, who, again, we've talked about it many times. There's a lot of belief that Jonathan Hatton is an immediate impact guy for you. It feels like the room is upgraded. Now, you got to stay healthy. That's a big question because, remember, going into last season, we thought the running back room looked great on paper and didn't work out because of injuries. And obviously, nobody could have foresaw the year that Jay Knott had. But I like Avant as well. Again, for what they're wanting him to do. He's not coming in to be like, oh, this is our bell cow running back. He's coming in to have a nice role, alleviate some of the pressure off of Robinson and Blaylock and catch some passes. Like I think he makes perfect sense for that. So I'm kind of with you on that as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want to keep it moving, but anything else from what they've added here that you wanted to make sure you hit?
I was just
Fields. Joseph, obviously, on offensive line. You can't have enough O-linemen. We've talked about that many times. Mackenzie Allen, I will say, too, for him, people, there was a lot made about how the production for him. He didn't really do much of anything in 2 years. Relax. Okay. He redshirted the first year. He was hurt basically all year this past year. He did play in Washington State's bowl game and caught a touchdown for what it's worth, had 3 catches in the game. I'm not here to tell you that he's going to be wide receiver 1. Okay. But he's a younger guy, a lot of football in front of him. He's a former Ben Arbuckle recruit at Washington State. That seems like a very natural, you need guys. We're going to talk about in a second, the departures. You lost a whole class of wide receivers in the portal. Okay. So you need, not everyone is going to be a star. And Alim could be that. I'm not even saying he can't be a big part of the offense at some point, but I think he makes perfect sense for just another body in the room with some upside, a lot of years in front of him. I kind of like that addition too. Again, I'm not here to gas up and say the guy's going to win a Biletnikoff, but I feel like that's a very high upside. I'm sure he probably didn't cost that much. Let's be real about it. That seems to be a pretty natural addition, I think, for Oklahoma there. I thought that was a savvy pickup.
Yeah, look, if you're looking for receiver depth, it's hard to do worse than a guy who has played at the Power 4 level, because at the very least you're getting a body who knows the deal. At best, you're getting someone who can contribute, and I think that is what McKenzie could be. To your question earlier, as far as guys that should probably contribute a bunch or start, I mean, I picked Rocky too, partially because guys like Sullivan and Livingstone are so obvious. So,
well, sure, outside of those,
hopefully my answer is understood, and that the easy picks are guys like Sullivan and Livingstone.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to say is, I talked a lot about Amarian Harris in one of the Oklahoma's own podcasts. He fascinates me, but Peyton Joseph is another one that I'm very interested in. I mean, you get a guy that was just recently a 4-star recruit, plays the interior. He feels like a wild card, but my kind of last thing was, as far as a superlative, is the wild card edition. The wild card edition for me is Dakota Fields. Dakota Fields is a 6'2", borderline 200-pound cornerback with plenty of youth who has a ton of talent and a rare frame, and you're adding him to a cornerback room that already has the likes of Eli Bowen and Cortland Gilroy. That's how much did we talk last portal cycle about corner compared to this one? And then they go get Dakota Fields, and it's Dakota Fields has the makings of a dude. Sure. That being said, the other reason why I bring him up, this is the guy that left the Oregon program without telling anybody. So, you can find the clip out there if you're curious. Dan Lanning mentioned it in a press conference. He was like, yeah, we didn't hear from Dakota. He just kind of left. And I think that's why for me, it's corner number 1, just intriguing in general in terms of the position and the addition. Number 2, the skill set and the frame, Dakota Fields, really young, buildable, promising talent. But number 3, weird exit from his most recent program. What does that mean for Oklahoma? He's one that I want to see and learn more about as we get closer to spring ball.
I want to ask you about what's left. Obviously, they've the majority of what they've done is done, right? But there is still more meat on the bone. They are still pursuing some other potential additions for this transfer portal class. Before we do that, I want to make sure that we tie up some of the guys who have left, because that'll kind of influence that conversation a little bit. Let's recap a little bit of some of the guys who have left. I've mentioned them in passing. There are a couple of them already. A bunch of wide receivers. The whole 2024 class is gone now. Kearney, Carry-On, Raggins, all gone. KJ Daniels had previously hit the portal as well. He also had Jaden Hardy enter the portal. The big one was Samuel Masigo as well, jumped in there. He jumped in right after Cole Sullivan. It was basically a 1-for-1, essentially, with that. From those guys who have jumped in, what kind of stands out to you? It would seem to me, and tell me what your thoughts as well, when it comes to a guy like Omasigo, and this certainly applies to a bunch of the guys they've lost in the portal. It applies to Marcus Strong, Marcus Strong, Devon Jordan to an extent. I would say maybe even Jacob Sexton or Jake Taylor, Cole McKenzie. These all fall under the same umbrella to me of, in today's college football, man, if you're an older player and you're not a definite slam dunk starter, it is going to be hard to keep him. Like that's just the reality. Like that's just the way it is right now. And I thought Omosigo certainly falls under that umbrella as well. Also a guy who played a lot for Oklahoma the last few years. Did only get 12 snaps in the playoff game, just like Kobe McKenzie, who's also gone. What stands out to you? I mean, obviously, again, Omosigo's the big one from at least the recent kind of run of departures there. What are some thoughts on the departure part of it?
Yeah, I think, if you go back on this podcast, and you can also find me saying this on KREF in Norman, I'm getting asked about Sammy Omosigo, and I mentioned on more than one occasion on video and radio, like, hey, man, just want to let you know, like, Sammy Omosigo returning is not guaranteed. And that was me. Yeah. That was me saying that for good reason. He was one of a couple that I had heard that, I don't know, maybe against the grain of others that I had been told was one to watch as far as going into the portal, because linebacker talent is so hard to find sometimes, like true inside linebacker talent. And as you know, I mentioned on the show and others, like when Sammy Omosigo started as like a hockey line change type of starter with Owen Heineke at the beginning of the season. I mean, it was the Michigan game where they were rotating Kip and Kobe off and bringing Sammy and Owen on as like a duo. And then as the year went on, it was Owen taking more responsibility and command, and Sammy's role seemingly slipped away. And I just feel like when that happens, to your point, it's hard to retain players that are backups or whatever the case may be. When that happened, it felt like, hey, I mean, let's just say what it is. Like, this guy's going to hear from schools if he wants to.
Sure.
So,
sure.
Omosigo to me is not shocking, but it is a testament to the times. And kind of going with that,
straight up.
Jaden Hardy is another where, like, Oklahoma really wanted to keep that trio of safeties intact. Like, I think that they firmly believed, and I think they showed you through giving Jaden Hardy and Michael Boganowski and Reggie Powers all snaps towards the back end of the year. They wanted those guys to know, we think all of you can play. It's just, when you got a lot of returning production coming back, there's only so much you can sell a guy on punt coverage and rotational snaps when he could potentially be a starter elsewhere. And so Hardy's a tough loss. Omosigo, tough loss, but I trust, Brent Venables and Nate Dreiling, the front office as well, to find bodies at linebacker. It's just, again, man, it's like you can almost guess. You know what I mean? Like, if you watch the games, you can almost guess what's going to happen. And I feel like these two, among others, were some obvious potential entries.
Yeah, no, hard. I mean, the safety room is just loaded. Reggie Powers is going to have a huge role. Michael Boganowski is a guy they love. Peyton Bowen is back. Omarion Robinson is coming on strong toward the back end of the year. Like, it just that seemed very, that makes sense. That one makes sense. The wide receivers, tough look for Emmett Jones. Obviously, we both like Emmett Jones. I think he's a pretty good coach. But when you have a whole class portal out 2 years later where they did nothing at OU, that's tough, right? That's tough. That's tough for Oklahoma to have a whole position signing class not do anything for you. That stinks, right? That's not what you need. So we like what they've done in the portal. We like the way they recruited the position, but they have not had high school guys make an impact at wide receiver. And I was begging all year for Kearney, especially him, carry on to an extent as well. Maybe even Jacob Jordan, you could argue, who is still around for now, to have some sort of a role. That was one of the most disappointing aspects of the season for me offensively, was that Zion Kearney and Ivan Carrion did not get any run at all. And I know, like, obviously there goes more into it than just, but like, we were both in Fort Worth last year at the bowl game. Like, they did some nice things when they were able to get out there. That was really disappointing. And now it makes total sense that they portaled out. Like, because again, they got recruited over again here with what they've done in the portal, which again, like, you address your needs, like, that's fine. Like, but just, it kind of just is one of those like that I don't even know the right word for it. Like that's a bummer. That's a whole signing class that just never even really had a shot, So it's what it is. But
honestly, the best way I would phrase it is like it's a much needed reset for that room and those guys. I think number one, like this receiver room needed to just hit the reset button and recalibrate the depth of that group. And number two, I think it's probably a fresh start, a necessary fresh start for everybody you just talked about, right? And I think a lot of those guys are good football players.
Me too.
I also go ahead.
Well, I was going to just say me too. And I look ahead to this year. I hope OU learns from that and they don't make the same mistakes with Elijah Thomas and with Manny Choice. Like you got to get because if this year and again I love what they did in the portal. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking to both sides of my mouth. I love Trail Harris and Parker Livingstone, but like if you go through this whole season just playing 3 or 4 receivers and Thomas and Choice don't play at all again, we're probably going to be having the same convo again, right? So, I don't know if that's sustainable to do it this way.
And I want to say this too. It's a double-edged sword. Like there's two sides of the story. And I also think that a lot of those guys we're talking about maybe didn't take the necessary steps in terms of development to earn their way onto the field. Sure. And that's certainly fair, and it's important to bring up. And I also think, too, it's like sometimes you're recruiting to the position you're recruiting to address a scholarship spot. And I don't think anyone was under the impression that certain individuals of that class were going to be key components of a starting receiving core. And I think that if you remember that Armed Forces Bowl and you saw some of those guys play in that game compared to the ones that did some things, some who didn't, like it is what it is, man. Right. And so again, it's a lesson to be learned, but I also think to the Oklahoma side, it's like, well, I trust in guys like an Elijah Thomas and a Manny Choice. There are some members of that group we're talking about who maybe just did not have it or didn't necessarily take the necessary steps needed in terms of development to play. And you know what? That's okay. They got a chance to land on their feet elsewhere, be solid players for other programs, and everyone can go about their merry way. It's curious to see what the response is from both sides now that this chapter is pretty much closed.
I don't know if I mentioned him or not already, but Giovanni Gibson in the portal too. I don't know if I said that. That Giovanni, it's just a bummer. He was going to, I'm certain, going to be a big part of this thing before the injury last spring, which he worked to get back from, and he did some nice things at the end of the year. I mean, he caught a touchdown against Missouri, had some moments, the back part of the year, but I think for Oklahoma, it was just a simple of like. Him coming back from that injury, I don't know if he did enough to be like, we're going to rely on this guy. And so they went and, they added some in the portal. And I think Giovanni's probably looking for a little more of a sure thing. And he ended up at Cincinnati. And so hopefully that works out for him. Obviously still in the Power 5, which is, good for him. But yeah, that's one of those. The injury just kind of derailed his time at OU, which is a bummer, obviously. So there's a reset at wide receiver. Again, we still don't know for sure on Isaiah Satania. It sounded positive the whole time, but until you know for sure, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. But it seems like they've positioned themselves that even if the worst were to happen and Satania were to leave, you probably can be okay because of what you added. Now, if you get Satania back, that's a pretty darn good starting group with Livingstone and Trail Harris. I really like what they've done there. So, we'll see what happens. Wide receiver, though, kind of getting a total overhaul reset a little bit through the transfer portal. So on that note, Collin, what's left? Obviously, the window's still open for a few more days. Window closes on January 16th. Now, there's always a lot of confusion about this. That's just the window to get in the portal. You can still do whatever. You can commit. I mean, technically, you could commit to anywhere up until spring ball starts. I mean, at any time, right? But you have to be in the portal by Friday, which is when the portal closes on January the 16th. What do you imagine Oklahoma still would like to accomplish in the transfer portal in this cycle? Obviously, they've had a lot. They've had a lot of different positions. They've seemingly addressed a lot of the obvious needs that they had. But you've been reporting to our subscribers at Sooners Illustrated they're still chasing some other names. Where are you at in terms of what's left for you to add in the portal with a week to go until the window closes?
Yeah, I think that the obvious one is defensive tackle.
Sure.
I mean, they have been involved with defensive tackles to some varying degree for a while now, and some targets that they had on the board ended up going elsewhere. And that's just the nature of the portal, right? I think that Oklahoma is very close to getting a defensive tackle spot addressed. You know, we reported at Sooners Illustrated over the last few days that everything we had heard, I mean, this is going on now on day 3. I continue to hear that Bishop Thomas, the former Georgia State defensive lineman, is probably someone that Oklahoma ends up closing a deal with here pretty soon. You know, that I know that there were a ton of agents out there who were kind of angling for their client maybe to potentially get a look there at defensive tackle with Oklahoma because it's a coveted spot in a coveted program if you have a defensive tackle. And it kind of sounds like Bishop Thomas maybe has the best odds to occupy that spot. At least the current buzz behind the scenes indicates that. And then you kind of work from there. You know, they were recruiting other tight ends on top of the 2 that they're bringing in because it's important to remember Rocky Beers and Hayden Hansen, while both likely going to be starters, have 1 season left. So sure. They just did a tight end reset, and they're on the verge of doing that again. I think that Oklahoma would maybe like, if it makes sense, to add another body who might stick around. Now, you know, Yale tight end Spencer Mermans was a name that we reported at Sooners Illustrated. I'm working with Chris Hummer right now to kind of publicly report what we're hearing, but I don't see that as a possibility for Oklahoma. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, to be honest with you, now that Jason Witten, which by the way, I haven't even talked about, like one of the players that shaped my upbringing as a football fan is now on the staff that I'm covering. It's crazy. Maybe Jason Witten sees a guy in the portal that he likes and goes to Jim Nagy's office and says, hey man, like, I think this is a solid depth piece. I'm not ruling that out. And then for me, you know, you move forward, it's like, I could see if they maybe wanted to add another offensive lineman. I don't know that it's all that sensible now, given the additions that they have brought in. I think they're pretty much set at receiver unless another sensible option comes to terms. And the number one thing for me now moving forward, Josh, if I'm honest, is linebacker. Because I still think they would like to add more. But they bring in Cole Sullivan. And to be honest with you, when they got Cole Sullivan, the buzz that I picked up on in like the portal agency space was like, oh, well, if Cole Sullivan's going there, then our guys aren't, because that guy's going to start. Well, you need bodies, you need depth. And on top of that, like we've mentioned, we think the way that we know both Owen Heineke and Kip Lewis are going to go, but it's not done. Like, technically speaking, neither of those situations have been finalized. So if you need linebackers, and those 2 situations are still somewhat floating out there, you know, linebacker to me is going to kind of be the one that I'm circling as we go through the back end of the portal window, because to the point I made earlier, it's hard to find too. So especially if you're a program like Oklahoma, where your expectations or linebacker are high. So that's the way that I see it as we navigate the next few days of the window.
No, I totally agree. I really think you've kind of done your job on offense. I mean, like you said, I don't think you would hate another tight end, especially a younger one, like you said. I mean, you are losing your entire room, right? I mean, you had Kent leave, obviously Kanik graduates, Helms left in the portal, Huggins is gone as well, and so you still have John Locke, who's a guy that we've just like totally not talked about at all.
Trinae Washington. Yeah.
Trinae Washington. I mean, you have some guy. I mean, you do have some guy. Kate McIntyre's still around too, unless I missed that portal. So, I mean, you do have some bodies in there. So, yeah, but I'm with you. Like, as far as like a younger, that makes total sense. But otherwise, I mean, you've gotten 3 receivers, 2 of which are going to start. You've added some linemen. I wouldn't hate another one, obviously, but you've added some pieces there. You got a running back in the room that we talked about earlier with Avant. Defensively, though, I agree. I mean, D tackle, if you could get Bishop Thomas in, that'd be nice. We did. I meant to bring it up earlier. PJ Adebawore hits the portal today and then comes back out after 2 minutes. So they almost needed an edge, like badly. But he's back in now, so that's less of an issue. Ozawalu, we talked about, like, he can go outside or in, so maybe you kick him outside if you really feel like you need another guy there, because, I mean, you're losing R. Mason Thomas, but you are bringing back, obviously, Marvin Jones you're losing, but you have Wine and Okoye, and so, I mean, you've got some serious talent there, and you add Ozawalu potentially if you need him on the edge there. So I'm with you. I think linebacker's the obvious because, I mean, no McKenzie, Omasigo, Kendall Daniels, probably Heineke. I mean, you're losing a lot at linebacker. Even if you get Lewis back, which you still may not. I mean, we've tend to lean that he will be back, but I'm with you. Like, that seems to be at a spot that you could use another guy. So we'll see. Still got some time to make some additions, but you're just kind of plugging holes defensively right now, or just supplementing. You're not even really plugging a hole. You're like supplementing, because you're in a good place. I think the roster is in a pretty good shape overall right now, kind of top to bottom. But yeah, you also, I should have mentioned too, it could have been a need, but they got Tay Sandell back officially for another year as well. One less thing you have to worry about, a kicker. So there you go.
Breaking news, by the way, Oklahoma is already up 3-0 in the season opener.
Yeah.
2026.
Who's the season opener again? The UTEP?
I think so.
I think it's UTEP. UTEP and then Michigan out in Ann Arbor. And then New Mexico. Quite a non-con.
Sheesh.
Be here before you know it. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on the portal. Obviously, tons of portal content over at Sooners Illustrated. More to come.
Can we
Go ahead.
I know we got a lot to talk about, but I know that it's kind of like the headline of the day quickly. Your thoughts on the PJ Adebawore situation. I'll start by saying this.
Yeah.
Josh and I had both heard rumors, even in season, that this was a guy that entering the portal was a possibility. But there was also feedback that we had gathered on our end from Oklahoma saying, well, we're going to squash those rumors pretty quickly when the offseason rolls around. And then once the portal comes, it's like, oh, wait, maybe there is some real steam to this because people really want defensive linemen and guys that can go get after the quarterback. And I'm not going to get into names, but I had heard some huge brands had been hoping this guy would become available for months. And he is in the portal for all of about 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
And
crazy.
I'm told that the expectation is he's going to stay, that situation has gotten figured out. And so if you're curious out there, like maybe you missed it, I think PJ Adebawore, after everything that just went on, is still going to be a Norman for 2026.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a relationship. Miguel Chavis, very close. I think Miguel Chavis would probably forfeit his salary to keep it. Like, it's that kind of, like, he would do everything to keep PJ Adebawore around. But this goes back, I think, to the same conversation again that we had with Marcus Strong and Omasigo. Again, it's year 4 for PJ. I mean, Taylor Wine's going to start, right? He's awesome. The other side, Okoye. I don't know what the other side's looking like right now. I mean, PJ's going to play. Don't get me wrong. He's going to be in there. But when you're an older guy, if another program, and again, we were hearing the same things in terms of other big programs, Power 5, SEC, I'll even say, are interested in you, and they certainly can pay you, and you can play there like that. If it's a little more of a sure thing in terms of a role, that's tempting. But it sounds pretty positive. Oklahoma do what they need to do to keep PJ around. It's a guy who they've invested a lot of time in and a lot of just everything in, right, to get him to be a big part of this. He had a pretty nice year, not like going to blow you away numbers wise, but when you watch the games, you could tell he was having an impact, and you're hoping that he makes that big jump next year, right? That this is the time that this was a great progress season for him. He played good football this year, but now can he be like a star, like we saw Wine be this year, and certainly R. Mason, and it certainly looks like Okoye is on that track. So, we'll see. I'm very interested in what they do at edge and kind of how that all – because, again, Wine looks like your guy. Okoye, I got to think, is going to have a big role. But then kind of how does the rest of that shake out? because I know they like Gilmore. Taylor Heim is a guy that I've heard a lot of positive things about potentially. And yeah, he kind of plays a little bit of linebacker too.
Yeah, correct.
But so it's an interesting position, but it's not a position I'm worried about. Miguel Chavis has bought some goodwill there because that position's been awesome for a while. So,
well, I think it speaks to Miguel Chavis as well, and in that defensive end room, like again, you kind of hinted at it. We had both heard that if PJ really wanted to, he could get a nice deal to go potentially start in the SEC or the Big Ten.
Yep.
He would have had no shortage of options, to put it lightly. And he's coming back to compete for a job at Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Like that type of sell is far easier said than done. And so for the Sooners to work it out, I mean, it's pretty impressive objectively to get this thing figured out for him.
No doubt. Let's hit a couple of other recruiting updates at the high school level before we get out of here. You were down in San Antonio. It was a good weekend for Oklahoma. 2 big gets. We'll start with the biggest one. Taven Epps, guy you talked about a lot, 4-star linebacker in 2027. He's our number 79 overall player at 24/7 Sports. This is an elite guy. Former Texas commit, right? Was he committed to Texas? He was. Okay.
Right.
He decommitted. It wasn't a straight flip per se, but obviously a former Texas commit comes over to Oklahoma. Collin, talk about it. I mean, you know him. You have a better understanding of the player. Obviously, another California guy, Stacey Ford. They had California. We've talked about it throughout this class. They've been rocking it out on the West Coast, and they do so again here with Epps. This feels like a pretty huge get, getting him into that linebacker class. Talk about Taven Epps and what he brings to the table a little bit. It's Oklahoma, identifying a guy we talked about a lot. He was in Norman during the season. I can't remember which weekend he came in, but I remember he was in town, and obviously they ended up getting the job done here. Great pickup in 27 with Taven Epps.
Yeah, I mean, first, the funny story that I have is sometimes we'll be in our workroom later in the week and we're sitting down typing stuff up, and I think I was working on something, maybe a portal report or recruiting notebook. And sometimes while we're sitting in the workroom, the recruits that are playing in the Navy All-American Bowl will just come into the workroom and sit down at our tables and, shoot the crap with us and talk. Mm-hmm. Taven was one of the guys that came in and would just like hang out in our room and talk about a bunch of random stuff with all of us. And so just, hearing him talk and hearing him interact with people, you're like, sure. Yeah, this is an Oklahoma guy. He's personable. He's relatable. He's kind of got that Cali cool to him, but he's originally from Texas. Like people haven't wrapped their head around that necessarily. He is a Lone Star State product, and you see that in his game. I mean, he was chill the whole week, but I mean, from the get-go in the Navy All-American Bowl, on the opening kickoff, he runs down the field and blows up the returner. It's like, yeah, it's not hard to see why they love this guy. And his frame, 6'4", big dude. I can't remember what we verified him at weight-wise or anything like that, but he's just got a new age, bigger linebacker build, capable of a lot on the field, and the personality, the intelligence. He's everything Oklahoma's looking for. And he mentioned it. He's like, Stacey Ford is like a brother to him. And so there was that built-in trust. He believes that Brent Venables and Nate Dreiling have the best ability to develop him and get him to the NFL. And then he talked about this too in the story I put together. He was blown away that when he went to Norman, the fans knew who he was. And a ton of fans, some probably watching this or listening to the show,
sure,
went up to him on his visit for the Ole Miss game, if I remember correctly. And then I believe he was back from Mizzou too. And they all were telling him like, hey man, we want you here. This is the place to be. I think he said that maybe like there was a group of students that found him outside of his entrance and all were shouting his name and stuff. And he was like, dude, that's a special feeling when you go to a place and you can tell that it's more than just the people that are recruiting you and it's their job to bring you in. Like people took the time to figure out who he was and to show that he was wanted. And so Taven Epps he's ecstatic to get to Norman. Oklahoma wanted this guy bad in so many ways. And he's a heck of a football player too, by the way. And to get a top 100 player like this at a spot like linebacker, one that means so much to the program, it's made sense for a long time. It's good to finally see it get ironed out and finalized.
No doubt. So Epps is the first linebacker for Oklahoma in 27. Commit number 12 in the class. Commit number 13 then came shortly thereafter. Deven Robertson, who is a Mississippi product, top 30 defensive lineman in the class in 2027. Not as familiar with him. Obviously, Epps is a guy we've talked about for a while, going back certainly during the season, like we said, whenever you visit and stuff. Talk about Robertson a little more in terms of what kind of a player this is that Oklahoma has added into the fold here. I'll tell you what, I like that. I mean, 333. So kind of listed that on his 24/7. I mean, big dude, obviously. Talk about Deven Robertson a little bit. What kind of a pickup is this for Oklahoma for Todd Bates in that defensive line class that they're putting together in 27?
This is my guy right here, man. I love Deven Robertson. He's my kind of defensive tackle in that he's not the tallest in the world, probably in the 6'1" range. But like you mentioned, he is dense, he is thick, but he's active. He can naturally win the leverage battle, but he's thicker and he's got that ability to, maybe shock lock shed, play some two gap, whatever. This is a guy that when I'm talking to him, he was like, a big reason why I want to play at Oklahoma was because of the defensive line movement and activity. And you and I talk about it. I love watching Oklahoma's defense play because they are as active in the stunt game and twist game and PTs as anyone in the country. And Deven Robertson talked a lot about how he wants to be part of that because of the way Oklahoma is able to showcase their defensive linemen. And he feels like he fits that specifically. There's a point, too, where during practices, I'm walking the sideline, and this big dude just out of nowhere approaches me. I'm like, whoa. And he's like, what's up, man? And we dap it up, and I'm like, how's it going? And he takes me through the defense's entire playbook in terms of what they're running up front, how he fits into it, their calls for the stunts and practices. Like that doesn't happen. By the way.
Sure.
It's rare. This is a intelligent, high effort, but talented and kind of a traitsy guy who, again, isn't the tallest, but he's just got like this fun, prototypical defensive tackle build. And his ability to, like Jim Nagy talked about on signing day, play the defensive line games and be athletic enough to fit into that, but also have the strength and the physicality to occupy blockers and free other people up. He's a dude, man. And you know how I feel about Mississippi guys. If I field a team full of Mississippi guys, I like my odds because they're gonna fight you. It's gonna be a long day for the other team. And so Deven Robertson is a guy. And I'll share this little nugget too. I was talking with some folks, like the assumption was that he was absolutely going to Oklahoma. And he told me on check-in day, yeah, I'm still going to Oklahoma. I'll say this, man, from what some folks in his camp were telling me, there are a lot of programs who are desperate to change that dynamic in the final days. Like maybe more than people anticipate. A lot of folks wanted this guy. Oklahoma pretty much told him straight up, do not commit anywhere until you visit us first. And he said he wanted to commit to Oklahoma 10 minutes before he left campus. It's a big get for OU.
No doubt. Joins Elijah Harmon, that defensive line class when I start there for Todd Bates. Obviously, looping Crew Jones as well on the edge. You like what they're doing, and we talked about it many times. 2027, it's looking great. Got 13 commits now. Still number one. I mean, it's January 12th. I acknowledge that. But 24/7 Sports team composite rankings, number one, Oklahoma right now. Again, long way to go before signing day in December. But this 27 class continues to look really, really good and really strong. So lots to be excited about for Oklahoma right now in that 27 class. And these two guys certainly add to that over the weekend in San Antonio. I think that's it. We had a lot. We had a lot to talk about. We covered as best we can. Tons of content over at Sooners Illustrated. Be sure to subscribe. Be with us every step of the way. Tom and I'll be back on Thursday. We'll hit some more portal stuff and some other team stuff. The deadline to join the draft is it Wednesday? I think it's the 14th. So theoretically, by Thursday's show, we should have some decisions to talk about one way or another. So we'll do that on Thursday. We'll also talk about some basketball. Not a good week for OU Hoops. They play Florida at home tomorrow. Big game. Tom and I will be there, so we'll talk about that as well. So keep up with us, and we'll be back on Thursday to hit all of that. And then we should get back on normal schedule after that, but who knows? There's always stuff going on. We'll figure it out from there. But That's it for now. Collin, appreciate you, sir. Get some rest as much as you can.
Yeah, I should mention here on the way out that this is the first day of a dead period.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, no poor business for a few days or whatever.
Yeah, so important note here to close out the pod. This is going to be the first of a 3-day dead period window within the transfer window, so don't expect any guys on campus anytime soon. There will probably be some activity on the back end we'll talk about next week, but because of that, I am very much looking forward to gathering all of this stuff up together. It's been a lot, but hopefully we covered it as best we could. And by the way, Jonathan Hatton Jr. was there. We barely talked about him. Navy All-American Bowl. He's a stud. So
right,
well, a lot of fun stuff going on, man. It's a great time to be part of Sooners Illustrated, and I'm glad we talk about it as much as we could here on the podcast today.
A lot. We had a lot, and a lot more to come. It's been a very busy January so far. Been a lot let's talk about, and it's been very busy over on the site, and probably more to come. It's only January 12th, month's not even half over, amazingly. So that's it for now. Back later this week with Tom. That's it for now. Collin signing off. Collin Katie, I'm Josh Callaway. See you next time right back here, as always, on Sooners Illustrated.